What's up, you guys? As you can see, we're in a little bit different of a setting right now. The ceiling in my basement is being redone, so my room is completely empty. I don't have any of my recording stuff set up, so I'm kind of just throwing this together right now because I wanted to get a trade deadline update out as soon as possible. I'm going to be going through all the major trades. Probably going to skip some of the smaller ones where it's just like Matt Thomas to the Utah Jazz for a second round pick, because ultimately those trades were just part of bigger trades to clear up roster spots. So we're going to be skipping over those, really just giving you the highlights, the big ones that you need to know about. Obviously, the first big trade that's on everybody's plate right now was the Nikola Vucevic trade. The Bulls acquired Nikola Vucevic and Al-Farouq Aminu, and in exchange they gave Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and 2 first-round picks to the Orlando Magic. I think this was a great trade for the Bulls. I think they acquired a second All-Star. We've seen what Billy Donovan can do with 2 All-Stars. They may just end up being a first-round exit, but they will make the playoffs at this point, I think. That's just my opinion, but I think they're much more suited to make a playoff push than they were prior to this. Everyone's called Otto Porter Jr. A young asset for a long time, but at this point, he's 27 years old, so I don't think it's really fair to keep giving him the credit as like a young asset when that's just really not the case anymore. So, yes, they did give up 2 solid young players, but, I mean, realistically, Wendell Carter Jr. hasn't really been having the best season, and, those picks could come back to bite them, but you kind of just got to take that risk to get a player like Vucevic to pair with Zach LaVine. I think you managed to keep him around even longer. Who knows what's going to happen with Patrick Williams and Kobe White. The second big trade that everyone was talking about was the Boston Celtics acquiring Evan Fournier, and all they had to give up was 2 second-round picks. Danny Ainge is notorious for, I'm not making this trade unless I'm fleecing the other GM. So unless there's something that we don't know about, whether it's an injury or something like that, the Celtics made out like bandits here, giving up 2 second-round picks for a 19-point-per-game scorer. He's really not going to do much more other than get you buckets, but at the end of the day, what do the Celtics need right now? I mean, they definitely could have tried to go after a big man. I think that may ultimately come back to bite them. They did end up trading Daniel Tice, but we'll get to that later. So the next big trade on everyone's mind, and this is one of my favorite trades of the day, was the Denver Nuggets trading RJ Hampton, Gary Harris, and a first-round pick for Aaron Gordon. I think this is a great trade for Denver. Aaron Gordon has been having a pretty solid season, arguably one of his not as great seasons in a while, but his playmaking is up, his effective field goal percentage is up, so that's promising for him. Gary Harris has been pretty disappointing since he came back from his injury, so they kind of don't have to worry about him anymore. RJ Hampton doesn't really fit their timeline. RJ Hampton is very much a project player. You're not going to get a lot out of him immediately. He's going to be a 2, 3, 4 years down the road kind of guy. And, their picks aren't really going to be worth that much. They're going to consistently be a top team in the West as long as they have Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr., and now Aaron Gordon. So they're going to be a solid team. I'm interested to see how they build in this offseason, regardless of what happens in the playoffs with them this year. So we'll see what happens. But I really like that trade for Denver. I think they're easily going to end up being a top 4 team in the West after that acquisition. The next big trade was the 76ers picking up veteran guard George Hill. And so to summarize what everyone got in this trade, the 76ers acquired George Hill, Ignatius Brazdeikis, who played for the Knicks. The Knicks acquired Terrence Ferguson, who used to play for the Thunder, was traded to Philadelphia, and is now headed to the New York Knicks. And the Thunder acquired Austin Rivers, Tony Bradley, a 2025 and 2026 second-round pick. Don't get me wrong, I think this trade definitely helps the 76ers. I'm just not sure it helps them as much as they probably think it will. I know Sixers fans are pretty happy that they got George Hill, but I really think they probably should have given up whatever Toronto was asking for Kyle Lowry. I think that probably would have helped them in the long run better. I think Kyle Lowry likely would have re-signed there, but we'll see what happens. George Hill is a great player. He was one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA last year. He's still got a lot to offer a team, so we will see what happens with that. One of the more surprising acquisitions of the day was the Portland Trailblazers acquiring Norman Powell from the Toronto Raptors in exchange for Gary Trent Jr. and Rodney Hood. I really like this trade for the Trailblazers. I think Gary Trent Jr. still has a little bit longer to go before he's ready to take that next step and really be a supporting player on a championship team or a team with championship aspirations. But I think the Raptors kind of won here too. They get Gary Trent Jr., who probably fits their retooling, rebuilding timeline a little bit better. So I think overall this was a win-win for everybody. Another kind of surprising trade that we found out about today was the Clippers trading Lou Williams for Rondo. And this was surprising because earlier in the year, if you remember, Lou Williams basically came out and said if he gets traded, he's going to retire. So I'm surprised that the Clippers were able to trade him for anything. I think come playoff time, Rondo will probably help the Clippers with their playmaking, some of that playoff scoring that they need, the defense. I think this definitely helps the Clippers. I'm not sure it's really the playmaker that they would have liked to have, whether that would have been Lonzo Ball or Kyle Lowry, but you kind of got to take what you can get when you're the Clippers and you don't have a lot of assets to work with right now. Now, the trade that everyone has been waiting on for the past year or so, Victor Oladipo has finally maneuvered his way to the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat traded Avery Bradley, Kelly Olynyk, and a 2022 pick swap to the Houston Rockets in exchange for Victor Oladipo. We'll see what Victor Oladipo still has left in the tank. I do have some concerns about his consistency ever since he came back from those injuries that he had, a couple years ago. I have been a little bit concerned about his consistency, but we'll see what he's still capable of. Houston gets a couple of guys that can, be a part of their rebuilding phase, probably fits their timeline a little bit better. They get the pick swap, so, maybe not the worst trade in the world, but they really didn't get much in exchange for him. Another trade is that the Dallas Mavericks managed to trade for J.J. Redick. This one was pretty surprising to me. The Dallas Mavericks acquired J.J. Redick, Nikola Vucevic, in exchange for James Johnson, Wesley Iwundu, and a second-round pick. So I think this probably just fills the void that Seth Curry had on the team last year. They get that shooting. J.J. Redick can play a little bit of defense for you, but I'm sure they would have liked to have Seth Curry still. I think this does add to their depth a little bit. Melly can kind of play off the bench if they need them to as like a 9th or 10th man. But yeah, I like J.J. Redick for the Mavericks. I think he definitely wanted to try and contend one last time. I think Luka's going to learn a lot from J.J. Redick in terms of shooting. I think that's going to be a great kind of mentorship that he's going to get to have with J.J. Redick. And finally, we have the news that the Raptors did not end up trading Kyle Lowry. This was very surprising to me. I thought he was going to end up in either Miami or Philadelphia. But really it came down to the fact that the Lakers didn't want to trade Talen Horton-Tucker, and the Heat did not want to trade Tyler Hero, and Philadelphia didn't want to trade Matisse Thybulle and Tyrese Maxey as well as picks. Personally, if I was the Lakers, I probably would have just said, oh well, take Talen Horton-Tucker. The way Talen Horton-Tucker has been progressing throughout his career so far, I think he's still probably 2 or 3 years away from, really being a contributing member to a championship team. And I understand the Lakers have to think about the post-LeBron and Anthony Davis era. But at the same time, if you're trying to win now, you only have probably 2 good years of LeBron left. You got to do what you can to try and win. So anyways, guys, this was the NBA trade deadline update. If you enjoyed what you saw, please be sure to subscribe, leave a comment below what videos you want me to do next. Hopefully I get the studio back set up again soon once my ceiling is redone. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for watching.